Braden. Right off the bat, I want to give credit as well to my fellow training and development specialist, Preston, who was originally going to present today. If you've attended previous STEM Wednesdays, I'm sure you've seen Preston, but he got called to do a training, his actual job working with teachers down in Texas. So he's on site, can't join today at this time. So I'm stepping in, happy to do so, but these slides are from Preston. So I do want to make sure he gets the credit for putting in the work and preparing this really fun presentation for you. So we're going to talk today about how to incorporate multicultural education and 3D printing in with some holiday celebrations, because it's that time of year. Everyone is thinking of fun projects for their classroom and ways to, introduce a little more enjoyment while still keeping an educational content and good value there. So once again, my name's Evan, and we are all coming to you from Boxlight. So as Braden said, we do not have STEM Wednesday next week. And also it sounds like plans may have changed here. So disregard January 3rd. It sounds like we'll be in touch about the next session. We'll be in the second week of January from Braden's earlier comments. So just keep that in mind. This is the first time we've had to skip a week since, we are not going to come to you on the holiday season. So really quick, today we are going to cover just a brief overview of multicultural education, what the importance of that is, what students can get out of that. We're going to explore a little bit of fun in Tinkercad, especially if you were with us last week. Hannah had a great session with Tinkercad. We're just going to show you a few options of things you could design very quickly and simply. Nothing overly complicated here, using built-in tools or freely available resources to use with Tinkercad to get a little bit of holiday spirit. And then we are also going to talk about potential projects that you could build on that, things that you could take to your own classroom to build on the skills that we practice today. So I have an audience question for you. How have you celebrated the holidays with your students? How have you recognized perhaps a diverse range of holiday celebrations? Hopefully somebody in the chat can contribute with some ideas there. I'll give you a few minutes. All right, we got somebody in the chat who's 3D printed ornaments. That's a great idea. That's definitely along the lines of what we're going to be talking about today. So get a little sneak peek there. Anyone else? Does anybody make any art, not including 3D printers? Oh, there we go. We got a panelist who has read about different holidays around the world. Absolutely, that's a great way. Now, of course, we can't always travel, but we can at least read about holiday traditions in other cultures. We have somebody in the chat who's created family trees. That's a really interesting idea. You could pair that with, the Christmas tree motif or whatever you need, but always the importance of family around the holidays too, of course. Trying different foods. Absolutely. I've got an idea for you on that front as well. So many different cultures have their own traditional food that may not always be familiar to our students. Really great ideas. So I don't think I need to necessarily dwell on this too much. I think most of us here in the chat probably have at least experience in our own life, or if we're in the classroom, we've probably experienced this just because the sheer diversity of students in our classrooms today, and the amount of resources that are freely available out there. It's really very easy, as we already said in the chat, to learn more about different holidays and different cultures around the world. But it is really important to open up that perspective to our students and really show them that there is more to the world and more to other societies and cultures than what they may be experiencing in their daily life. So, of course, that includes the history, the culture, the contributions of diverse groups from around the globe. Maybe pick a few to focus on or do a quick overview of as many as possible. Of course, the choice is yours there, but it really hinges on getting insights from multiple fields. I love that we had the option of, in the chat, we talked about food. That is one aspect of a multicultural education. Of course, there are cultural artifacts, which, if you are familiar with our STEM site, my STEM kits, we do have quite a few cultural artifacts there that you can tie in with 3D printing. But of course, there's many other accessible ways to sort of involve yourself with that field. And then, of course, there's literature, there's film and, productions from those cultures. There are celebrations that you can view. Of course, we can always see things on YouTube or documentaries, but drawing different, different formats, different cultures there as well. And then, of course, this all builds global awareness. The idea that, there are other places out there that have traditions that are just as important to them as you might feel about your own family and your own cultural traditions. The holidays are a great time to do that because there are usually some really exciting things that you can mention that really engage your students. I'm curious if anybody has an idea here about creating learning moments. It's all well and good to show somebody, a video of something that's happening in another culture, but how can we really make sure that students are learning from these activities and not just, passing them through? What might be able to do with those? All right, we got a chat idea about peer interviews. Yeah, I love just the idea of discussing with a peer, not necessarily whole class, but breaking this down into peer-to-peer interviews, recording our thoughts, developing our questions, always good for addressing other standards in the classroom as well. Anything else? Yeah, we got another chat contribution. Round robins would be another option for sure. One of the things that we had in mind for potentially building on these learning moments is allowing students to sort of participate in that culture a little bit by creating something of their very own that references what they've just learned. Many of us cannot fully immerse ourselves in a foreign culture, it's too tricky, too many obstacles there, but we can at least experiment with some of the motifs, some of the designs, and really participate in that in just a small way. And so I thought we could look at some easy things that we could do using one of the software products that we have traditionally talked about in these STEM Wednesdays, right? We have often turned to Tinkercad. If you're not familiar with Tinkercad, this is a really great free 3D design platform. It's not from Boxlight, but we use it all the time because it is so accessible and really pretty powerful once you get into it. I'm going to just quickly drop a link to Tinkercad in the chat for anyone who might not be familiar with this platform. But if you do not yet have an account and you're interested in 3D design and using that in your classroom, I would definitely sign up as an educator account. Again, this is free. And I thought we could talk a little bit about designing some ornaments. So one of our very first comments in the chat, I think, was pretty prescient on that, designing and printing some different ornaments in class. You can see on the screen here just an example of a few of the pre-made designs that are already in Tinkercad. We want to make this simple, both for you and for your students. If you are comfortable doing 3D design and you want to create your own custom shapes, absolutely go for it. But there are pre-built things in Tinkercad that you can modify in small ways. So the students still get that aspect of personalization and that contribution, but they are not necessarily going to have to design something complex as maybe this menorah or the geometry of the snowflake. Yeah, we have someone in the chat who agrees. A lot of my kids would love to create their own customized menorah, maybe themed with animal faces or sports. Yeah, that can go for anything. Even if you want to stick, closer to the traditional Christmas spirit and do some ornaments, while you could, of course, go with snowflakes, spheres, stars, that sort of thing. But you could customize any one of those shapes with your own designs that you can put on. And you could even pair that with the tool that Hannah shared last week about the Scribble tool, where students can even handwrite their own tool and get their own 3D design of their handwriting, which would pair wonderfully with many of those ornaments or on menorah. So let me switch over to Tinkercad here. And I'm going to show you some options that are available in that software. First of all, if you're not familiar with the platform, once you sign in or log into your account or create a new one, you're going to want to go over to your designs here. And you'll see I have a few designs. Preston and I, of course, are millennials, so we had sort of independently arrived at a little Pokemon ornament, which I thought was kind of fun. Not maybe the most culturally relevant artifact there, but it is a lot of fun. This one is not directly from Tinkercad, but this is a free download that's available on another website called Thingiverse. So Thingiverse is a really popular free 3D design website. So if you're looking for potential items that are beyond what's available in Tinkercad, you can always go check out Thingiverse. So for this one here, I imported the little Pikachu here as well as the Santa hat. I dropped a link in the chat too if anyone wants to go check out that Santa hat. Both of these files are free to download, but this hat actually goes with the Pikachu. You can see there's a little space underneath for his ear there, and it will turn out looking a little bit like this. So I have my own design here. You probably see that on my webcam. Of course, not in appropriate colors right now, just because of the available filament color that I had with me. But that's what it turns into, if anybody is not familiar with how that looks once a 3D print is completed. But for this model here, obviously we want to keep things in the holiday tradition here by having our cute little Santa hat. But what you could do with any shape that you want, whether that is maybe just a simple triangular shape for a pyramid shape or a cone for a Christmas tree, or maybe you have a star that you've drawn, because you can see there are pre-built shapes in Tinkercad over here. Many of them are simple geometric shapes, but you don't need to limit yourself to that. You can look for other aspects, like characters might be really fun for the holidays. But whatever you've chosen, if we're going to stick with our ornament theme, we need a way to attach this to a Christmas tree. So even if a student finds something they really like out there on the internet, chances are it's not readily available in ornament form. So how could we transform that? Does anybody want to mention in the chat what you would need in order to turn this into an ornament? All right, we've got an option in the chat. Yeah, add a loop on his head or a hook on it. Yes, absolutely. That is definitely the simplest way to go about things, because Tinkercad will allow us to do that really easily. So let me go over to my basic shapes here, and we're going to look for something that could work as a hook or a loop. And right away, I'm finding this torus shape. Your students probably know that a little bit more as a donut. Well, you just have to click and drag it out there. Obviously, this is, first of all, the wrong orientation and the wrong size. So let's manipulate this shape just a little bit. And if anybody noticed how the Santa hat goes on Pikachu here, I think we're going to have to make our loop up on his ear instead of the top of his head, because the hat will just pull off if we use the loop on that. So for this little guy, I think we probably need to make it on his ear. So first of all, we need to make this a lot smaller. So I'm going to use the little corner square here to resize my loop. And I'm also going to adjust, now this is more optional here. I want to adjust the sides. I don't think I really need that many sides on my 3D shape. You see it gets progressively less smooth. This is more a personal thing, but you can see the design of these ornaments already, they're kind of blocky. They have, facets here. So I'm going to match that style with my torus shape. Now, the next thing that I have to do is rotate it. So you can see I have rotation commands here that I'm hovering over with my mouse. I'm going to use this up here at the top, and I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. I could also pull my mouse outside of that circle, and now I have fine grain control, but for this model, 90 is perfectly sufficient here. We do have a question in the chat. Does adding more sides reduce the time needed to print? Not so much in this case. I don't think that the geometry of this particular object is really going to change too much of the print time. If you change the size of this torus, though, that will dramatically affect the print time. If I make this object massive, of course, that is going to really affect my print time. But the way it stands right now, probably not a big deal to change the sides too much. And you can see here, I am now positioning it as close as I can by panning around my object to see where that needs to go on his ear. And I can control the height by using my mouse with that little black cone there in Tinkercad. This is probably the trickiest part of the entire build, just because it gets a little fiddly. But even this is something that I think most of your students will be able to handle just fine. It's really just trial and error of using your mouse and moving things around. So I'm going to move it a little bit this way. Turn my view here. That's pretty good centered on his ear the other way, but it does need to go up a bit. And I think that looks pretty good for an ornament hook there. I can also change the size of my radius here, as well as the size of my tube. So obviously I want that tube to be a little thinner so I can fit the ornament string or the hook in there, but not too thin that it breaks when I 3D print it. So maybe something like 2 millimeters or perhaps even 1.5 would be a good radius and tube size for my ornament hook. So now I've got my Pikachu with an ornament attachment point right up there on the ear. The last thing we want to do for this ornament to make it official is to select my two objects using my shift key here, highlight both of those and use the group button to turn that into one object. I can turn him back yellow here. So now the 3D printer will recognize that these are connected shapes that are supposed to go together. Now I could send this to my printer. Of course, every printer has a slightly different way to do that, a different way to share this design with that machine. But in our case, if you're using one of the robo printers, you can go to export. You can either download an STL file, or you could change your view to 3D print here and send that to your RoboCloud account directly with the Robo button over there. Either one of those will allow you to convert this into a file format that our printers are able to read and will print directly on either your Robo E3 or your Robo E3 Pro. But of course, Tinkercad is a very flexible platform, will work with many different kinds of printers. Now, I picked Pikachu just because it's a fun little ornament. Not exactly the most culturally relevant thing, but it's a lot of fun. I did also take a look through the Tinkercad search function here. So if we search shapes, you can take a look and see what's out there. But you can see I found a Christmas tree, a snowflake. I also searched for menorah, and this candle showed up when I searched for Diwali, the Festival of Lights, of course. I think maybe even more so, I'll have another shape to show you for Diwali, but these options are out there. I just printed this Christmas tree just a few minutes ago. It's actually a really cool little print, and it works great with our robo printers. So in the sort of main topics for today, you could add an ornament loop to the top of this tree. You could add some spheres. Obviously, these are going to have to be scaled down, but there's no reason why you couldn't add some ornaments to your tree. Just place those on there as needed. So those options are single objects within Tinkercad. So if you just even want to stay within this one platform, you can find a lot of things. But there's a lot of other options out there. Like I went to Thingiverse, which is a very popular free resource of 3D printable objects. And I just searched for holiday cookie cutter. Look at all the great options that are out there. Students could design their own with the Scribble tool, or they could customize something that's already freely available for them. These are all downloadable files that you could put into Tinkercad or print directly. So lots of great options there. And I also did want to give a shout out to Preston as well, who made this beautiful lamp for Diwali. I was really blown away. You can see all the customizations that he's done here, the little designs he's added. Really great stuff. An example of the kind of thing that is actually possible within something like Tinkercad. It's not all about really low resolution cones and solid geometric shapes like what I've done in this presentation. It can really get quite complex and powerful if your students are ready for that. Okay, so one more question. here, did this sort of spark some interest about using a 3D printer for multicultural education? And does this seem like something that could be a possibility for you that would actually see some real benefits in your classroom? Because, we're always aiming to target what teachers need. I think this would be fun for me when I used to be an educator myself. But if any current educators are out there in the chat, I'd love to hear if this was beneficial and if you've thought up any other ideas as we've been going through. All right. We've got Samantha Dooley who's raised her hand. If you want to go ahead and type in the chat, I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. And allow to talk here. So you should have access to the microphone now as well, Samantha.
Well, I didn't mean to raise my hand, but I guess we will.
No worries.
On the 3D printer for multicultural, I have used one in the past for many things, like the holiday is the most obvious. And then we have the ability to customize different pieces, like in our robotics or my computer science, where the kids can make it more of their own with their, if there's a flag or a certain kind of style that would be more appealing to them. That's probably what's jumping out at my head right now.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I'm glad to hear that's worked for you. Absolutely. That is, just where those 3D printers sit in the capability realm. You can add them to really custom devices, right? I don't think you're going to be able to purchase items that go with your robot to that same degree of flexibility, but you can design your own. And the students have that personalization, whether it's for multicultural education or just expressing their own individuality. That's the perfect use for a 3D printer. We also have a couple last project ideas here before we let you go. Beyond the ornament idea, you could, if you had the time, probably a little late on December 13th, but if anybody's interested in preparing for next year, a 3D printed advent calendar actually would probably be a really simple, although potentially time consuming at the beginning, a simple idea to put into practice. You could create little containers, little objects for each day, maybe a different holiday or a different cultural tradition associated with each one. So students can open that up at the beginning of the day and really dive into a new aspect that they hadn't been familiar with. Of course, we just saw the cookie cutters, customizing those, designing your own symbols. If anybody is not familiar with what Hannah had been talking about last week, with the Silly Scribbles tool in Tinkercad, I believe there's a video that should be posted on that one on our YouTube page. If anyone has that link, I don't have it handy. But as I was thinking about the holiday cookie cutters, you can actually draw your own shapes in Tinkercad with your mouse. And you could create your own cookie cutters with that very easily, I think. Although they might not be the perfect geometry of this Christmas tree, for instance, having that individuality, that creative outlet, I think would be really useful. And thanks, Samantha, once again in the chat, being able to be individual is huge in middle school. Absolutely. Having ownership and 3D printing their own projects is a great way to win them over. Yeah, I totally agree. The ability to sort of do their own thing and share their own ideas is really important. And then this last one here, to 3D print various cultural symbols and use them in a mobile. I really love this idea. I had never even thought of this. Preston came up with this. And as soon as I saw this image, I was like, I want to do this myself. So maybe next year I'll have my own holiday mobile in my house, or if I was a teacher, in my classroom. All right. We're going to wrap things up here. If anyone wants to share their own favorite holiday tradition, maybe spark some ideas with what we might do in the class, but also just to, close out on a good note here. If anyone wants to share their own favorite holiday tradition, we'd love to hear it in the chat. But that is all for today. Our STEM Wednesday is wrapped up here. Braden, if you have the date handy, I just don't have my calendar in front of me. When is the next, so we make sure that folks know when they can return for the next one?
Yeah, we have, there is one on what's currently scheduled for I believe it's gonna be January 10th. Okay, so
Okay.
January 3rd is the next one, but I know a lot of people are still gonna be out, so we're gonna do January 10th.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Braden. I am going to just change this slide really quickly. And then anybody who's seeing this recording or maybe just watching with mute on will know no STEM Wednesdays now until January 10th. Have a wonderful holiday season, everyone. Thanks to those who contributed in the chat. As always, we couldn't do this without you. And we'll be back with some more STEM topics in the new year.
Thanks, Evan. Bye, everyone. Have a good holidays.
Bye.